this $80 handheld can play almost any retro game. It's ROM B360. This is the Trimui Smart Pro, which is a retro handheld sent to me by MAIDeSITE. But to be clear, all opinions are my own. I will show you how it performs so you can make a decision if you should buy it or not. Link will be in the description. Also subscribe to support the channel, that would be great. Inside the box you get the Trimui Smart Pro, which is well protected, and you get this manual and a USB-C charge cable. At first, the Trimui Smart Pro looks like a PlayStation Vita. It has almost the same layout, however the D-pad is a little bit different. And same goes for the regular buttons and shoulder buttons. The sticks are also different as they have an LED illumination around them. It also has a menu button, a start and select button, 2 speakers and a Trimui Smart Pro logo and text at the front. Furthermore, at the top it has a power button, a USB-C port and volume buttons, and at the bottom it has a small port to hook it up to a cord, which is not included. It has an event switch, a USB-C DC port to charge it, a mic, an SD card slot, and depending on the model you buy, it has pre-installed games on it, which I will show you in a bit. And of course you can install your own games on it, and it also has a 3.5 jack port to connect the wired headphone. Looking at the specs, the Trimui Smart Pro has a 4.96-inch IPS fully laminated screen with a resolution of 1280 by 720, which looks really sharp and vibrant. It has a Cortex A53 quad-core at 1.8 GHz, a GPU at 660 MHz, 5V of charging, double RGB mood lights on the joysticks, and a 5000 mAh battery, which would give you about 5 hours of game time. I chose this white model, but it's also available in black and a retro grey. You can also decide if you want to buy the Trimui Smart Pro standalone at $80 or with an SD card of 64, 128 or 256 GB that goes up to $120. But they included some pre-installed games, so that's pretty cool. And we will go through those games and consoles in a bit. During this filming, MAIDeSITE also has a Christmas sale, and with the Trimui Smart Pro you get a free bag, so that can be cool if you're into that. Before using the Trimui Smart Pro, I would advise to download the update, which will improve several things like the game list thumbnails, joysticks and much more. I will leave a link to the update in the description. So let's check out the menu, the settings, the games and the consoles. So in the main menu you have several tabs at the top. You have a favorite tab, a recent tab, and from here you can play any game that you've previously played. You also have an arcade vertical shooter tab, which we will get into later, multi-cartridges and a Pokemon collection, which is absolutely great if you're into Pokemon. And here is a quick overview of the Pokemon games you get on the Trimui Smart Pro. But Pokemon games aren't the only one you get. As you can see, you get arcade games, Dreamcast games, Game Boy games, Sega Mega Drive, Nintendo 64, PSP games, PlayStation 1 games and a lot more. But we will check in a minute how good they run. At the Apps tab, you can check your USB storage, play the game 2048 and also access a digital user guide. You can even play online if you set up NetPlay, and at the settings tab you can check your display settings, for example change the brightness if you're gaming in a dark environment, and you can change it from 0 up to 10. You can also change the LED brightness or completely disable it if you like that. And here is how the several LED brightnesses look like. Personally they are not distracting me, so I will keep them on all the time. Furthermore, if you go back to the main menu, you have the option to change your volume settings, but you can also do that from the top with the physical buttons. But if you want to do it through the software, you can change the volume settings and the BGM volume, which you can take up to level 20. When we go back to the main menu, you can set up your Wi-Fi settings and you can even set up a hotspot, which is pretty cool as well. There's also the option to set up custom themes, but they're not included. But the cool thing is that you can map your own keys, but personally I kept everything to the basic settings. Then if you go back, you can go to the System tab, where you can power off the device, change your language settings, enable or disable NetPlay, refresh your ROMs, reset to factory settings or test your hardware. You can also calibrate the sticks, go to flash mode or check your device info. But let's test out some games, starting with the arcade vertical shooters. So it's pretty unique that you can play arcade vertical shooters on the Trimui Smart Pro, as I haven't seen this on much other handhelds before. I do have to say the buttons are a bit small to play in vertical mode, but it's still pretty cool that you can make this happen. Overall, the vertical shooters work pretty well on the Trimui Smart Pro, but I have to be honest, they are not all working perfectly, as some have some sound crackling or a little bit of stuttering. But on this game right here, it's working pretty nice. Just take it in for a second. If you want to quit your game, just press the menu button, but before you quit, just save your game, or you can load a different save state, go to an advanced menu, but you can also start netplay to play with some friends, or you can exit the game. But from the advanced menu, you have a lot of options to choose from, so that's pretty cool as well. So here's a quick example of the Nintendo Game Boy, which is working nicely as expected. You get the bezels on the side, which add a nice little touch to your retro handheld. Everything works nice and snappy, and I do have to say the regular buttons work quite well. But let's move on to the next game. But before we do, I just wanted to show you from the main menu you can press the menu button, and from there you can search your favorite game, which will save you a lot of time. And as you can see, the Game Boy Advance is also running quite well. The image is sharp and vibrant, the sound is nice, and the gameplay is great. The same goes for the Super Nintendo, and as you can see here, I had no issues playing Super Mario World and even Super Mario Kart. The only issue that I had is that I needed to get used to the controls compared to Mario Kart 8 on the Nintendo Switch. So let's try something more demanding like the PlayStation 1. On Crash Bandicoot, everything seems to be working quite well, but to be honest, I've seen it working pretty good on other handhelds as well. And here is one of my favorite games, Tekken 3. I've put so many hours into this game and I still can't get enough of it. So it's great that it is included on the Trimui Smart Pro. Moving on to the Sega Dreamcast, also one of my all-time favorite consoles. It's working pretty well, but I've noticed some sound crackling here and there, and I'm not sure if it's running as fluently as it should. But unfortunately, there's no FPS counter at the top. Soul Calibur, on the other hand, is running quite well. And if I remember correctly, this was a launch title on the Sega Dreamcast. Also, did you own a Sega Dreamcast when it released? If so, let me know in the comments if you picked one up and what your favorite game was on this console. For me, Dead or Alive definitely has to be somewhere up there. And I have to say it's playable on the Trimui Smart Pro, but it's not running very fluently. Hopefully on the new model we get some extra power to play some more of these high demanding games. But still, I have to say it's playable and pretty cool that you can play this on a handheld. Also, just check out the sound quality of this device when I turn down the volume to 0 and then set it to max volume. Let me know in the comments what you think of the sound quality. So this is a game I think almost everybody will love, so I just had to test Super Mario 64. And just a little spoiler, all the Nintendo 64 games seem to be running quite well. I didn't own a Nintendo 64 as a kid, but I used to play this game at a friend's house and we had a lot of fun with this game. So the thing that I love is that the Trimui Smart Pro has these analog sticks which really shine on games like Super Mario 64, because not all handhelds have these. Also, Mario Kart 64 is running quite well, but I do have to say the triggers feel a little bit stiff. They feel more like buttons instead of triggers, which isn't bad, but I really preferred regular triggers on this Trimui Smart Pro. Just keep that in mind if you want to buy it. And here is just one more test of the Nintendo 64 game Wave Racer, which looks pretty cool and is running quite well. I've seen a different result on other handhelds, so it's great to see that it's running quite well on the Trimui Smart Pro. So I said that the Trimui Smart Pro looks a little bit like a PlayStation Vita. Unfortunately, there are no Vita games on the Trimui Smart Pro, but there are PlayStation Portable games on it. So here is Ridge Racer 2 from the PlayStation Portable. And even though some PlayStation Portable games can be high demanding, it seems to be running quite well at first sight. But let's test out some more games. Here is some Tekken 5 from the PSP, which also seems to be running quite well, besides the fact that I'm losing big time in this game. And here is the ultimate test to play God of War on the PSP, because on most handhelds this game just won't run well. And as you can see here, it's also pretty difficult for the Trimui Smart Pro to run this game properly. Burnout, on the other hand, runs quite good. It's very responsive, the image is sharp and the sound is also pretty good. One more thing, here is a small size comparison to the Steam Deck and Nintendo Switch, and as you can see, the Trimui Smart Pro is pretty compact. But what are the pros and cons? To start, the Trimui Smart Pro has a great design that looks pretty similar to the PlayStation Vita. It has a sharp and vibrant IPS screen, which I absolutely like. It has good audio of itself, but you can also plug in a headset. It has a nice and clean interface. Depending on the model you buy, you get pre-installed games, which mostly work good. Vertical mode is pretty cool as well. And the buttons and sticks are nice. Not to forget, you can illuminate the sticks and you can even disable them. Looking at the cons, the Trimui Smart Pro could use a little bit more power so you can play every Nintendo 64 game fluently, and same goes for the PSP games. Another improvement point from my side would be that the triggers are a bit stiff and could have been a bit more smooth. So would you buy the Trimui Smart Pro? If you want a nice and comfortable retro handheld for a decent price for yourself or as a gift, I would definitely recommend the Trimui Smart Pro. I would even say just get one with an SD card if you don't want to install the games yourself, as it works pretty good with most retro games. You can get the Trimui Smart Pro at MAIDeSITE with the link in the description, so check that out. And don't forget to subscribe and click here to watch the next video. See you there!